Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask Brad and Becki Gray. The Democratic Party had a bad election this year, and they're still concerned about what Trump's election means for the Republican Party. But do you see any new political parties being formed as a result of these elections? Or what kind of reforms might we expect from the two existing parties, Brad?
I don't see any new parties being formed. I do see splinters within the Republican Party still existing between what I call your trailer park crowd, which was the wing of the Republican Party that actually won the presidency, and your Chamber of Commerce crowd. It was interesting that on Wednesday, Speaker Ryan immediately got out in Wisconsin, held a press conference, and announced, oh, we're in, and we're going to have unified Republican government. So I think the Republicans see the importance, Tom, of trying to unify behind Trump. Trump has moved his party from a conservative party over to a nationalist populist party, in particular on two issues, on immigration and on trade, and on looking at globalization. So major shifts in the way the Republican Party is going to move forward.
But there was some discussion that maybe the Republican Party might splinter between the as you say, the Chamber of Commerce crowd and
the sweetness of victory will help prevent any type of splintering because
they will
all come to the trough to help govern.
Becki, you think there are going to be any reforms or any new parties?
I don't think there'll be any new parties. I think that we're too entrenched with the two parties that we have. And even with the very rough and tumble election that we've had on both sides of this, I think still they want to come home. They want to make things work. And so what you've heard just in the last, since Tuesday, since the election, since we got the results, is not we're going to march away, but that we're going to come together. We're going to be kind to each other. We're going to find common ground. We're going to work together for the good of the country. So I think there'll be efforts there. But I think, this is politics.
They call that a honeymoon, don't they?
And probably not real,
short-lived?
probably short-lived. But, you still figure out some way to get along. And I think that we'll see that on both sides, although I think there is going to be a lot of soul-searching, a lot of examination of where they've been, what hasn't worked, and where you want to go.
I hope we don't run into the situation we ran into in 2009 when Obama came in and Eric Cantor and Mitch McConnell not only said no, but heck no, we're not going to do anything of coming to the table. And I think Democrats should not embrace that type of philosophy, that they shouldn't be obstructionists, that I agree, for governance and for our future, you should come to the table, accept the outcome of the election and try and work together.
Brad, you're a Democratic consultant. Doesn't the Democratic Party, particularly in North Carolina, need to do some real soul searching as to what their message is and who their constituencies are?
Absolutely, and you can't run a 24-county strategy in North Carolina and win at the levels that you need to. Now, you've won a couple of statewide races, the governorship still in question, but I said last Tuesday was the second worst defeat I've ever seen in the Democratic Party's history. The worst defeat that I've ever seen was in 2010. And again, I said during the show, you've got to figure out a strategy to deal with your suburban counties around Charlotte, Greensboro, Winston, and Raleigh.
Sort of the shoulder counties.
And, here in North Carolina, I think that Republicans feel like they're in pretty good shape, and they've got some young up-and-comers that are joining the General Assembly and those kind of things.
They weren't saying that to each other 2 months before the election, Becki. There was a lot of dissension.
Well, of course there was, but my point is the Republicans, I think, are kind of in better shape, and they won, in the state.
Winning does a lot.
Yeah, winning does a lot. As Brad said, everybody wants to be part of that team. But what I'm saying, kind of as we're shifting through the ashes, if you would. One thing that I'm saying on the Democratic side is there are some real strong leaders with real futures. And when I say that, I'm talking about Deborah Ross, I'm talking about Dan Blue III, and I'm talking about Josh Stein. That to me is the future of the North Carolina Democratic Party. They're all in their 40s, 50s. I think that Dan Blue...
Dan would be insulted by that, by the way. I don't think he's hit the 40s yet.
Probably so. But I'm a big Dan Blue III fan. But when you look at that now, Deborah Ross and Dan Blue, of course, lost their race. But I think in many ways they come out of this as winners because they have run statewide races, competitive races where they really had to work. And they were competitive in those races. They've raised money. They've raised their profile. They've traveled across the state. They've increased their name recognition, and I think particularly those two. Now, Josh Stein won, so it's a little bit different dynamic there, but they have learned a lot moving forward. And so when we talk about where do the parties go, I think that's one of the lessons that comes out of this election is there's a future to the Democratic Party, and it lies with those three and other leaders too,
Becky
I'm sure, as they
talked about
evolve.
some rising stars in the Democratic Party. Who do you see as some rising stars in the Republican Party? One way or the other, they're going to be a Republican is going to need to run for governor. It's assumed that Dan Forrest will be making that.
Yeah, no, and that scares me to death because I think he's way out of step with North Carolina. I think North Carolina is still a purple state, even though we went red this past time. And I think Dan Forrest is dangerously socially conservative.
All right, so
way
who are
too
some
far to the
Republicans
right.
that you see that might?
Richard Hudson, for sure.
Yeah.
George Holding, Congressman Holding. That will be an interesting who follows Richard Burr. Those are probably the two. And David Rouser down in the eastern part of the state.
I think Rob Ryan, who lost his House seat during this election, but I think, and I hope that that's not the last that we hear of Rob Ryan. I think that he is a real bright and shining star.
All right. We thank you for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.